Hello and welcome back to a new version of the News Project Live. We're calling it the News Project Summer Edition because we are very fortunate to have with us Griff McClellan, who is going to be back with us for, 5 or 6 or 7 weeks this summer. As an intern here at GNAT, Griff is someone I'm sure many of you remember as the host of the Sportshire Show, which is always a lot of fun to watch. And Griff and I are going to be doing the sort of the News Project news update for the next few weeks. And Griff, great to have you back.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. It's great to be back here for the summer, interning at GNAT, and I'm looking forward to getting this show rolling. Thank you for having me.
Well, believe me, it's my pleasure. And great to have all the rest of you with us as well today on Thursday, June 16th. Well, we have a couple of news items to get to, things that have happened in the area over the past week or so. So let's get right to it. One of the big events that happened last Saturday, June 11th, was a March for Our Lives rally that took place in Manchester. That was one of only 2 that took place in Vermont, the other one being up in Montpelier. Across the country, several hundred took place, and the major one was in Washington, D.C. But last Saturday, we saw about 70 or so folks kind of circling the roundabout and waving signs and hearing cars honking horns in support. Well, most of the time in support, sometimes not so much in support. But we had a chance to talk to some of the folks who were at the rally, including the organizer Dana Zazinski. And if you go to GNAT's website, GNAT-TV.org, you'll see our news segment that we put together about that, which will give you the story of the event. As we all know, this was a movement. March for Our Lives basically was a movement that began after the shootings at the Marjorie Douglas Stoneman High School in Parkland, Florida, a little over 4 years ago. And that movement obviously kind of resurfaced following the events in Buffalo, New York, and Uvalde, Texas, which we've all heard about, those tragic shootings. But the discussion is also surrounding just everyday gun violence, which you don't tend to hear about so much. But it's really shocking to hear, to me it was shocking anyway, to learn that basically on average there are about 100 Americans who are killed from gun violence every single day. That's suicides, homicides, accidents, but that's several mass shootings that are happening, the equivalent of several mass shootings that are happening each and every day. The ones that, of course, that grab a lot of the attention are the ones where you have, as we saw in Uvalde and Buffalo, several people in a public space, and especially the one in Uvalde was, of course, particularly heart-wrenching since it involved so many young children. But anyway, we had that march there in Manchester, and well, we'll see where that leads. Down in Washington, D.C., there apparently is some movement underway to come up with some kind of a piece of legislation that might in some way at least make it harder for 18-year-olds to acquire assault rifles or semi-automatic military-style weapons. That is still very much a work in progress as we're here today. The framework, as I understand it, does not include a ban on assault rifles, but rather is trying to sort of bolster the background check procedure and also make it easier for people who may be questionable as to whether or not they should be able to have a weapon of deadly force like that to acquire it. Well, Griff, I guess we'll see what happens this time. I mean, this seems to be a dialogue that happens every time we have one of these events, whether it's in one of these 2 recent ones or Parkland, Florida, or the Orlando shooting or the Las Vegas shooting a few years ago. The immediate aftermath is it's time to do something, and then that momentum seems to fade. Maybe this will be different.
Yes, certainly. That's what lots of us like to think, that a protest in a small town like this can, even in a small town like Manchester, can make a huge difference. I mean, you and I were both at the event. We saw how many people showed up in support by protesting the current gun laws in this country. And obviously, this has been a massive issue for many, many years now, in fact, decades. And the more we can educate ourselves on the seriousness of this issue, and the more we can participate in protests and hear everybody's voice, I think change is possible. We can't guarantee anything. Obviously, it's very difficult for massive changes like these to occur in this country, having to be passed through the Senate and all that. But at least for now, I think the event in Manchester was a success. Obviously, many people showed support by holding up signs or honking horns or giving thumbs up. Obviously, a handful of people didn't, by either burning rubber on their trucks or by giving thumbs down or by booing, etc. But the point is, obviously, it's very, very devastating to have to constantly watch the news, read the news, and hear about all these terrible shootings in schools and in cities. Like, for example, like as you mentioned, Las Vegas, one of the deadliest shootings ever. And now we've seen a bunch of terrible incidents occur in schools where innocent children are losing their lives. And it's obviously a very political issue, but when we interviewed Dana Zazinski the other day, she actually said it's not a political issue. It's just about saving humans' lives and making sure we can keep our children safe in schools. So that's ultimately what the issue is.
I thought the other important thing she said was that we're trying to find a way to kind of reach an agreement with folks across the political spectrum on this. It's, as she put it, and I thought it was really quite telling, nobody's in favor of dead children. Obviously, there are people who are concerned, who are legitimate, responsible sports folks who like to go hunting or like to do recreational shooting, and obviously there's a space for that. No one's trying to take those weapons away, but we just simply have to figure out why it is that these kinds of events keep happening. But I thought that was a good point, that this is like trying to find a compromise where we don't see this sort of thing happening again.
I agree. I'll add on to that. I think the key term here is compromise. That the whole protest that occurred not only this Saturday but years ago as well, when the whole March for Our Lives event began in Washington, D.C. following the Parkland shooting around 2018, is not necessarily to remove all guns from everybody in this country and take away people's rights to own a gun if they hunt or for whatever reason. I think the compromise here is making sure it's very, very difficult to own one. And I think what people are seeking is just a really, really lengthy process for people in order to obtain a license and ultimately own an assault weapon of any kind.
Well, anyway, like I said, you can watch our segment on the GNAT website and also on our channels, 1074, 1084, 1094. And with that, Griff, tell us a little bit about the book fair that took place over the Manchester Community Library. Well, I guess it was last week as well. That was a 3 or 4 day long event. A lot of interesting things going on, it sounded like.
Certainly, yes. The Green Mountain Festival and Book Sale took place at the Manchester Library last Thursday until last Sunday, so June 9th to 12th. It was fascinating. I was there all 4 days. They had a bunch of events. It was family friendly for pretty much all ages. Some of the most notable events included guest speakers, most of whom were authors, including local authors such as Sue Halpern, as well as Archer Mayer, and many others. I had the chance to actually speak with those two. It was very, very fascinating to hear their stories and their journeys and all their books, their phenomenal books they've written. So it was great to hear them speak, as well as they had a bunch of really neat interactive events for children, such as stop motion or claymation classes to keep the kids entertained. It's in another area of the library. I got to step in for a little bit and see what that was like. It was really neat. But aside from that, in terms of the actual book sale, they had over 10,000 books to choose from for people attending the event. So there's obviously a lot to keep people entertained with. And overall, it was just really neat. They also had some student performances. For example, on Friday night, they had a bunch of people from Long Trail School show up and perform for a couple hours. I got to check in with a handful of those students as well as their teacher, and they just put on a show for everybody. It made the show a lot more lively, or I should say the event more lively. And on Sunday, a BBA student performed some music on her own as well, followed by an ice cream social from Wilcox. So it was just so neat to see the community come together and really, get a great taste of what the library has to offer and why reading and books are so important. And it was really a great opportunity for myself as well to get to know the community better. I got to meet a handful of new people and immerse myself within the library community. It was fantastic. I'm really glad I got to cover a lot of it.
And how did that silent auction go? I heard that was also one event that was happening there. That was pretty interesting. And boy, there sure were a lot of books. I wandered through there, the Hunter Room, and yeah, that would be about a lifetime of reading right there.
Indeed. The silent auction, I don't know the exact results or stats from that. I didn't run it. I didn't necessarily follow that one as closely. What I do know is it took place on the opening night, so Thursday night, just before Sue Halpern came to speak to everybody. So again, it was just a great community gathering event where a bunch of people packed into the library to take place, or to participate in the silent auction, as you mentioned. And if I'm not mistaken, this was the library's first major event like this since COVID.
Oh, right.
So it was, aside from the auction, it was just a great way for people to bond, to get together again.
Well, great. All right. Well, moving on from there, just going to talk briefly about some of the elections we've got coming up and the candidates who are running for some of the offices. As many of you know, August 9th is the date of the statewide primary election. That's when the candidates from each party going to get things sorted out. And we've already had several of the candidates who are running for the statewide offices here, either in the studio or on Zoom, and we will be continuing to have several more. So far, we've been able to do interviews with all 5 of the Democratic candidates who are running for U.S. Congress, including Keisha Minsdale, who dropped out. So there's only 4 right now, but if you want to go back, you can see our discussions with Senator Becca Balint, Lieutenant Governor Molly Gray, Dr. Lewis Myers, and Shanae Chase Clifford. All 4 of them are running in the Democratic primary for U.S. Congress to, they're hoping to replace incumbent Peter Welch, who was hoping to become a U.S. Senator now that Senator Patrick Leahy will be stepping down after nearly 50 years in the U.S. Senate. We're also going to be setting up interviews with the 3 Republican candidates for U.S. Congress. It's Liam Madden, Erica Reddick, and Anya Tinio. We have had a discussion with Congressman Peter Welch, but we're going to hope to do another one. He is being challenged in the Democratic primary by a gentleman from Brattleboro, Isaac Evans France. So we want to have both of them, as well as Christina Noland, who is running in the U.S. Senate race, she is a Republican candidate in that primary. There are 2 other Republicans in that primary, Gerald Malloy and Myers Mermel. So we will be talking with all of them, I hope, certainly before the primary. The governor race, Phil Scott, and is the incumbent, of course, and is being challenged by Brenda Siegel, but right now she's the only Democrat in their primary, so we'll probably hold off and talk to them maybe after the August primary. Different story in the lieutenant governor race, very crowded situation there, a total of 7 candidates altogether, 6 candidates altogether. Kitty Toll is one we've had on so far. We are looking forward to an interview with former Lieutenant Governor David Zuckerman next week. It leaves us with Patricia Preston, who is a CEO of a nonprofit corporation based up in Burlington, and Representative Charles Kimball. He's a state rep from the Woodstock area. On the Republican side, in the lieutenant governor's race, we have Senator Joe Benning, who represents Caledonia County in the state legislature, and also Gregory Thayer, who is an alderman from Rutland. Hopefully the two of them will be right here in the studio or on Zoom. Just real quick, we're also going to be covering the Secretary of State's races, the Attorney General race, and also perhaps the State Treasurer race. But in that case, it's only one candidate in each party running, so we may wait until after August. Just touch briefly on the Secretary of State race. We're going to be talking to Chris Winters, who is the Deputy Secretary of State. He's one of the 3 Democrats running for that post to replace the incumbent office holder, Jim Condos. Sarah Copeland Hanses and John Odom are the other 2 candidates. And on the Republican side, there's a gentleman named H. Brooks Page. He is also running for state auditor, attorney general, and state treasurer. So we'll be able to check several boxes off when we have an interview with him. Locally, we have makings of a race in for the general election between 2 newcomers to local politics. Mike Rice is running as a Democrat, and Bill Giotti is running as a Republican. They are unopposed in their primary, so we'll presumably have a chance to talk to them both when we get to the general election. And otherwise, incumbents Seth Bongartz and Kathleen James in the Bennington 4 district, which includes Manchester, Arlington, Sandgate, and part of Sunderland. They're running unopposed, as is Kelly Piala, running as an independent in the mountain towns. Her district has been changed slightly because of the redistricting. It used to be Jamaica, Londonderry, Stratton, Weston, and Winhall. It will now be Andover, Londonderry, Weston, and Winhall. And again, just real quick to give you an update on the COVID numbers. We've usually tried to kind of bring you up to speed on what the latest information is on cases. We have 141 new cases that were reported on Wednesday, with 33 folks in the hospital. This is around the state. 5 Vermonters in ICUs around the state. And interestingly, although the numbers have gone down a lot, Bennington County is still the only county in Vermont which is reporting high levels. That means an area has more than 200 or more new COVID-19 cases per 100,000 people over the last 7 days. And Bennington County is the only one, when you break it down per capita, that is in that range. Griff, back to you. We have some exciting community events coming up, beginning with some soccer matches to bring you back to your home territory there.
Indeed, yes. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, I guess now on to sports. Vermont Fusion Soccer will be taking place this Saturday at Applejack Stadium. They're about, I think, midway through their current season. They have games every 2 weeks or so. But anyway, it's going to be a really, really fun event. A lot of people will be there to see the Women's Premier Soccer League play. It's a group of amateur athletes. Some really, really incredible young athletes going out there to play their hearts out in Manchester, Vermont. I'll be there to cover it. I'll speak to the president of Fusion as well as town manager of Manchester, John O'Keefe, people such as these. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be incredible to watch. And like I said earlier, it's great to have crowds back post-COVID. And it'll be a really, really fun event. As you know, I love sports, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. I've marked it on my calendar.
And they'll have 2 games, I think. One next Saturday, and I think there's one, is it the following week?
I don't know that right off the top of my head. They have games throughout the summer.
Okay, so it'll be ongoing right through.
Yeah,
okay.
Ongoing every few weeks or so throughout the summer in July and August. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for people locally to come by and support.
And I guess we also have other events plugged into the events page event on the GNAT-TV website as well.
Yes.
Folks can check out.
Yeah. For example, we have, we previously mentioned the Manchester Library, a community libraries event. They hosted this past weekend. They have a bunch of other weekly events going on. For those of you who are into it, they have Dungeons and Dragons being hosted, as well as Magic the Gathering games such as these. So if that interests you, feel free to visit the library. And also, if you're interested in farmers markets or anything of that sort, Dorset Farmers Market is in action. It's live right now, as well as numerous around the local area, such as Arlington as well, will be active again. We got to cover them last summer as well. They're always packed with a lot of people. It's a great event to go cover.
And great music, too.
Indeed, yes. But that's just to name a few events. But for all those of you watching, feel free to visit GNAT-TV's website at gnat-tv.org/events. Here you can find all events coming up for the next few weeks. So please, if any of these events interest you, and I only mentioned a few, there are so many others I can't fit into the time frame of this show. But feel free to visit our website and check out whatever event interests you.
All right, well, we'll leave it there for today, and that's the first edition of our new News Project Summer Edition. Great to have you with us. Thank you for sharing your time with us today, and we'll look forward to seeing you again next week. Meanwhile, have a great day. And thanks again, Griff. Good to have you back.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward.
All right, we'll see you next week.